Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well today. This time we are going to be talking about Galaga on the NES. Galaga is a fixed arcade shooter, or shoot 'em up, or shmup, which I'm still not on board with saying, but whatever. This is a really great game, it's a very colorful game, and it was fairly important for arcade games at the time, especially with the development of single-screen shooters. It added a lot to the genre that just was kind of lacking and really made things stand out and just a lot more fun. For a very long time, I had no idea that Galaga was a sequel and that it was part of a series. I had never played Galaxian until a few years ago. I didn't know G Plus existed until I read Michael Kimball's book on Galaga. And yeah, I didn't know too much about the series until the internet came around. And I started looking for more games to collect, and that's how I found out Galaga was part of a much, much larger series. For whatever reason, they kind of dropped all of the other names and stuck with Galaga, which is probably for the best. It really is, the best one out of the series. Granted, I haven't played G+, but having played Galaxian, I think Galaga is probably the best one. What makes this game special are two things. Well, really, really three. We'll go with that. One, it's the the enemies that you're fighting actually fly into formation. So they enter the screen from, various parts, and they will move into location around the screen. This was a big deal at the time because before this you really didn't have a bunch of shooters. You had Galaxian, you had Space Invaders, which was the big one that kind of set the template for what space shooters were going to look like for a while. And then you had just a bunch of clones of Space Invaders and a bunch of other games as well. There was more variety, but for the most part, there were just a whole lot of Space Invader clones. Even Galaxian was a Space Invaders clone. That one added a little bit of difference because their enemies would also move, but they would already be in formation once you got on the screen. Galaga spiced that up by having them move into formation and really added a lot of other fun stuff to the game that was desperately needed. It's also a very colorful game. You have the enemies that actually go after you. You have them shoot at you. You have a few varieties of enemies that you can fight. And also the part that's really fun, even if it does kind of feel a little bit like a scam, some of the enemies will actually capture your ship, and then you can retrieve it, and then you'll have kind of dual-wield ships. It sort of feels like a scam because you still lose that life if you die, and it makes your hitbox bigger, but it does allow you to shoot more than what you would before. So you'll be firing 2 bullets instead of just a single stream. So I touched on the history of the game a little bit earlier, but this is a sequel to 1979's Galaxian. Galaxian was Namco's first big hit in the arcades. They followed that up with Pac-Man, and then Galaga was released in 1981. Gosh. So it was released in 1981. So Namco had 3 big hits in the span of 3 years. Galaga was such a hit that Namco did something that Nintendo had done. They started scrapping other arcade cabinets and replacing those with Galaga cabinets. That's why you can find some white cabinets that used to be old Bosconian cabinets. Those are all really kind of fun things that you can find out about Galaga. but it's not really how I experienced it. At least not for the most part. I did play the arcade cabinet, but I'll get into that one later. I played it on the NES. This is the version that I know the most. It's not as good as the arcade version. It's still a pretty faithful port, but it does suffer from a lot of other shooter ports at the time where they basically shrink the screen to one side and add in all of your display stuff over in the corner, or over on the right side, as you can see. I think it's probably the only way they could have done it. I think. I could be wrong on that, but it feels like that's the best way that they could have come up with in order to do this right. I think they might have been able to squeeze it in on the top, but hey, they did it this way. It is what it is. As I mentioned earlier, I played the arcade cabinet, so I played the original arcade game. That wasn't done in an arcade, though. It's one of the few things that I remember about going up hunting with my dad, because I didn't do it that often. It wasn't really my thing. I preferred to just kind of hang out in the woods, and I didn't really like the fact that it was, 20 degrees outside or closer to 0 degrees. I didn't really like that too much. So, 20 degrees Fahrenheit, by the way, not the other one. So I would go up there and just kind of hang out. But we stopped at this, and I'm pretty sure it's gone. It's some diner that I have no idea where the hell it was. But I remember going in there, and they had one or two old arcade cabinets. And this was in probably the early 90s or so. So the Galaga cabinet was easily 10 years old by then. And I remember getting this BLT sandwich and it came on what looked like an entire bag of Ruffles chips. And I remember eating that and going over to the arcade games with, I think maybe like $1 or $2. And putting those into the Galaga cabinet and just getting my ass handed to me because I really didn't know what I was doing. And I was just playing the game like I think I was probably 7 or 8 at the time, would play this game. Just not really knowing what they're doing and messing around, having fun, smashing the button and making it probably broke for the next person that came by, assuming that the cabinet actually worked to begin with. But that's kind of my biggest memory of it, was going up north with my dad and, playing on a Galaga cabinet and having way more food than a 8 or 9-year-old probably should have. It's a game that really means a lot. Not so much that, I played it in the arcade or I remember doing something special with it. I just remember having fun with it. And, having some other memories of the game. It's a lot of fun to play. I still enjoy playing it today, even though I'm just as bad at it as I was back when I was 9 or 10, 8 or 9. So let's wrap this up. Galaga is a really great game. It really was kind of a turning point for the single-screen shooters. Or the fixed shooters, or the fixed shoot-em-ups, whatever you want to call them. It really was a turning point for it because it brought in the fact that you could have the enemies move around the screen. You could do more with them. They could be bright and colorful because before that they really weren't all that colorful. They added the backgrounds in. It really was just a great game. Even if the background is just a bunch of blinking stars, it's still better than just, a black screen with a few white dots on it. So let me know what you think in the comments below. If you love Galaga, hate Galaga, or have any memories of playing it, I'd love to hear about them. Talk to you guys later. Bye.